I think these Georgia Bulldogs are going to have a massive game this weekend against the Texas Longhorns. That's what we're talking about in today's video. We're going to be talking about which players should have a really nice game, which players from the state of Texas are eager to get out there and take on the Horns. And we're going to talk about possibly some other players that Kirby Smart mentioned earlier this week who could see a more expanded role. So there's a lot to talk about, obviously. Number 10 ranked Texas coming to town. I think if Georgia wins this game, they are in the college football playoffs. And there are several players that I have an eye on who I think could, be major impact players this weekend. The first guy I want to talk about is a Texas native from Houston. He's a veteran playmaker and a guy who I think should see some opportunities to make even more plays on offense, and that's Dillon Bell. He was a former three-star, was not recruited by Texas. He's 2-0 against the Horns already, part of the team last year that beat Texas twice. Now in his final season, Texas come to play in Athens. I think Dillon Bell could have a really big role in this game, especially if the Georgia run game cannot get off to a hot start. Obviously, the Texas defense, they're great at stopping the run. They're number 2 nationally if you look at the numbers. So if they happen to slow Georgia's rushing attack down, I do think that Mike Bobo will try to get Dillon Bell some different types of carries and different opportunities to make some plays. They trusted him down the field late in the Ole Miss game, so the coaches trust him. He knows what he's doing. He's a really good player with the football, but he hasn't been dropping it a ton either this year, so he's taken a step forward there. Wouldn't surprise me if he got one of those end arounds or two or some big passes coming his way when it matters most. I do think that Zachariah Branch will obviously get his touches as well. They need him to make some plays. And then there's Noah Thomas, another guy who is playing more and more in the absence of Colby Young, who got injured against Ole Miss. Noah Thomas has seen his role expand. He is a Texas native too. He's from Texas, played high school out there. And again, he transferred from A&M, so he's got a different level of hatred for the Texas Longhorns that maybe the rest of the roster doesn't. So I do think Dillon Bell will get some opportunities, and I think Noah Thomas will also play a big role in this game in the passing attack. So those are two guys on offense to keep an eye on. I'm going to talk more about some offensive players in a second, but there's also plenty of defensive players who have a big challenge ahead of them. One is Daylen Everette, right? This is a guy who made lots of plays against Texas last year. He played really well in both of those games, and he's got a big challenge in front of him. The Horns have weapons. Ryan Wingo is a really good player, former 5-star guy. He's made a lot of plays for the Horns. Georgia recruited him heavily out of high school. Obviously didn't work out, but he can make plays. DeAndre Moore Jr. can make some plays too. So Daylen Everette's going to be, in coverage against a really talented receiver. And if they can't get the run going, which is something they've struggled with all year, they're going to get the football out on the perimeter. So those really, strong receivers, right? So Georgia has to do a good job of tackling in the open field. They've got to get off blocks. They've got to attack the ball carrier. So Daylen Everette's going to have to be sound in coverage. But I think a key to Georgia's defense is tackling after the catch, making sure those receivers do not get yards after the catch. They're both dangerous. Well, they've got several dangerous receivers who can make plays once they have the football, but they've got to tackle well as soon as the catch is made. So Daylen Everette got to make plays in coverage, but he's got to tackle well too. Same with KJ Bolden. He's coming off a really strong game against Mississippi State, 10-plus tackles. He is all over the place. Kirby Smart had a lot to say about him earlier this week. Of course, you could read all of that and more for free over on dawgpost.com. But he was talking about KJ, saying, hey, this guy's our leader back there. He's the one making some of the calls in the secondary. He's had to grow as a leader, obviously an incredibly talented player, but it's now part of his job to make sure everyone's on the same page back there, because sometimes, especially earlier in this year, they weren't. Now they've done a better job of limiting explosive plays. I think Georgia's defense is probably one of the best in the country over the last several weeks, for sure, about limiting explosive plays. And you do that with communication in the back end. So KJ Bolden is the guy who has to do a lot of the communicating, make sure these guys are on the same page, because I'm not sure Arch Manning is a quarterback who can nickel and dime Georgia up and down the field the way Trinidad Chambliss did and the way Ty Simpson did. So they need to hit explosives, because I'm not sure they're going to be able to run on Georgia either. So limit the explosiveness, make Texas go up and down the length of the field with several first downs. That's the key. If they can limit the explosives, because they've got weapons, I think Georgia's defense should be fine, but a lot of that is KJ Bolden and Dalen Everett making sure they are doing what they're supposed to. Let's talk about some more Texas natives real quick. Cash Jones, right? A guy that Georgia fans probably don't want to see a bunch of on Saturday night. He is a Texas native. I think he will still be in there on third down. I mean, that's what he is. He's the third down back. You're going to see him out there. Michael Uini, a reserve offensive lineman, is from the state of Texas. We talked about Dalen Everett. We talked about KJ Bolden. Justin Williams, obviously from Texas. Joseph Jonah Ajanye. More reserve players. I don't, Joseph Jonah Ajanye may start, but he's a guy who needs to start making more plays for a five-star kid from the state of Texas. Justin Williams has flashed here and there, but those are guys that I know in the back of their mind, they want to play against Texas, and they want to make plays against the Horns. So two guys just to keep an eye on. On offense, I think Josh McCray is going to have, I'm not saying a big game, he's going to have some key moments. It's tough to run on this Texas defense, and there's going to be situations where it's going to be third and short, fourth and goal. Josh McCray is that big, heavy power back who does a really, really nice job of getting those tough yards. They're going to need him in some capacity. So I think at least one big, tough, important run from Josh McCray, whether they're backed up in their own end zone, whether they're on the Texas goal line looking to punch it in, or whether they're in the middle of the field trying to make a decision. Do we punt? Do we kick? Do we go for it? Let's just hand it off to our 230-pound bruiser who just gets those tough yards. He's as good as anyone out there at that, and he's made those big type of runs for sure. The overtime goal line run against Tennessee where he's dragging 3 Tennessee defenders at the goal line. The one against Ole Miss where he's hit behind the line of scrimmage, powers through, and finds a way to get that first down. He is an important member of this offense, and he's got his role, and I think they're going to need him in some capacity at some point in this game for a really, really big, important run. So just something to keep an eye on. There's 2 offensive linemen who I think have a real challenge ahead of them. The Horns have really impressive pass rushers. They lead the SEC in total sacks. Colin Simmons is outstanding off the edge. He was a 5-star for a reason. Anthony Hill Jr., another guy who can really get after it. So Monroe Freeling at left tackle, Juan Gaston Jr. right tackle, or Ernest Green, whoever is playing tackle for the Dogs on that side, they're going to have their hands full. And if those tackles can play well and limit the pass rush from the Texas defensive front, that's going to make things easier for Gunnar Stockton, who is going to have to make some big plays in this game. I think they need to use his legs, but there's going to be times where he's going to have to make a big throw. It's going to be up to the tackles to give him that extra second or even half a second to step in and make a big throw, whether it's on third or fourth down or whether they're trying to hit an explosive deep, and he needs just that half a second more to let the route develop and let whoever it is create separation down the field. So those tackles, they've got a big challenge in front of them. It's not going to be easy. They need to be up to the task. Obviously, Gunnar Stockton is going to be heavily involved. He's the quarterback, right? He's the guy making all the calls. He's getting everyone into position. So I think not necessarily his playmaking ability, but making sure he's getting everyone lined up. He's calling the protections. He's making audibles. He's making the right decisions in the RPO game. He's got to play smart up here against that really talented Texas defense. If he does that and can command the offense, make sure everyone is set, ready to go, and making the changes that he needs to pre and post snap, I think that's going to go a long way. CJ Allen, Raylan Wilson, those guys are going to be blitzing. They're going to get after Arch Manning. This is a guy who can run into sacks. He is talented, and he can scramble. He is mobile. He can run. But there are many times where he makes the first guy, whether he's blitzing or not, miss, and then another guy comes in and hits him, right? Or he's trying to scramble and just can't find a way to really run away. The guy runs into sacks. So if Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen are, kind of crossing and blitzing from different directions, it might open things up for maybe a Gabe Harris or a Quintavious Johnson who finds a way to get off the block, and Arch kind of runs into him or gets in their area and they're able to make a play. So the defense needs to play sound collective football to help each other out. So I think those linebackers could have a big day if they do their role. And I still think, Georgia needs to get that running game going. Someone needs to break a long, explosive run if possible. I don't think they're going to be getting 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. It might be really tough, but eventually either a Chauncey Bowens or Nate Frazier or someone needs to hit an explosive run to help open things up in that passing game. But and also to keep the Texas offense on the field, keep that defense on the field. If Texas is losing the time of possession battle, it's going to make things tougher for them to step up and play sound physical football in the fourth quarter. And of course, that's where Georgia absolutely crushes teams in the final 15 minutes. So if they keep that Texas defense on the field as much as possible for the first 3 quarters, then I think they can kind of lean on them and maybe open up the running game late when they need it to. So just a few guys I have in mind I think could have a really, really nice day against the Horns this weekend. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you over on dawgpost.com.